Hi, so we will continue learning taints and tolerations, and in this video we will see how we can tolerate a taint. Okay, so for example, if we want to deploy this pod to the Kubernetes cluster, we will see how we can tolerate this taint set on the first worker node. So we allow the scheduler to schedule this pod on the first worker node. Okay, we saw previously that taints are something that we set on nodes to prevent pods from being scheduled on that node. Okay, so for example, here we taint this first worker node with this taint. So now the first worker node will not accept any pod unless the pods tolerate this taint. Okay, so for example, if we set this state on the first worker node and we try to deploy this pod to the Kubernetes cluster, here the pod can be scheduled on the second worker node, but it can't be scheduled on the first worker node. Okay, because here on the second worker node we didn't have any taint, so it can be scheduled here. But on the first worker node, here we have a taint, so the pod should tolerate this taint. Okay, and we saw that a taint consists of three fields. So you have the key, the value. You can choose any key and the value that you want. And for the effect, here it can be either schedule or PreferNoSchedule or NoExecute. And we will see the difference between those effects later. Okay, so now to tolerate this taint, we have to set a toleration here on the pod. Okay, it is very similar to the taint. It consists first of all on the key. So here we have a key field. We have an operator, and we have value, and finally we have the effect. Okay, and to tolerate the taint set for the first worker node, which is this taint, here in the key we should mention the same key used for the taint, which is key 1. For the operator, here we have two operators. We can use either the exist or the equal operator. Okay, here we will work with the equal operator. And for the value here, we should mention the same value used for the taint. So here we will mention the value used for the taint, which is value 1. And finally, for the effect, here we put the effect used for the taint. Okay, which is NoSchedule. So now this pod, this Nginx pod, tolerate this taint. So now when we try to deploy this pod in the Kubernetes cluster, now this pod can be accepted by the first worker node. Okay, so after adding a taint to a worker node, we have to tolerate this taint on the pod. So here we have worked with the equal operator, but we can work also with the exist operator. So for example, let's say that we have another pod here. For example, it can be let's say that here we have used the Redis image. So here, let's say that we want to tolerate the taint set on the first worker node, which is this taint. So here we should do the same thing as we do with the Nginx pod. Here in the spec dot tolerations, here we tolerate taints. So here we have to mention the key of the taint, the operator. So for the key here, we will mention the same key of the taint, which is key 1. For the operator here, we will use the operator exists. And what we have to know here is that when we use the operator exists, the value is not required, okay? So we didn't have to mention the value here, okay? So here we just have to add the effect, which is in our case, so we want to tolerate this taint. The effect is NoSchedule, okay? So now this pod tolerate the taint set for the first worker node. So now it can be accepted by this first worker node. Okay. So now the Redis pod, after tolerating this taint, it can be accepted by the first worker node. Okay. So to tolerate a taint, here in the spec of the pod, we have to mention the key used for the taint, the operator. The operator can be equal or exists. If it is equal, here we have to mention the same value used for the taint. And if it is exist, here we do not have to set the value field. And finally, we have the effect. And here we mention the effect used for the taint. Okay. For example, here, if we set here the key to just key 1, this pod can't be accepted by the first worker node, okay? Because the key of set here in the toleration is different from the key set for the taint. So here we should mention the same key. The same thing for the value. If we mention here a different value from the value set for the taint, here this pod can't be accepted by the first worker node because it doesn't tolerate this taint. Okay, here the toleration doesn't match this taint. The toleration and the taint match each other only if they have the same key. So they should have the same key. They should have the same effect. And finally, if the operator is exist, here no value should be specified. And if the operator is equal, here the taint and the toleration should have the same value. Okay, so here we should have the value 1. So for the operator, if it is exists, here we didn't have to mention the value, but if it is equal, here we have to mention a value in the toleration, and this value should be the same value used for the taint. So taints are used to prevent pods from being scheduled on a specific worker node, and tolerations are used to allow pods to be accepted by these nodes. So I hope that you understand how we can tolerate a taint set on a worker node, and thank you very much.